Shalom, shalom from Jerusalem. This is Yehuda Blake speaking. Today is the 7th of the month of Cheshvan, which is the 8th month according to the biblical calendar. And today is also the 25th of October. And we began last week or 2 weeks ago, we began studying together the stories of the understanding, reading together what the Torah is teaching us when we read the book of Genesis. So today we're going to continue. We're going to continue with Genesis chapter 1. We actually can spend, I think, a whole year studying Genesis chapter 1. But we're not going to spend a whole year on Genesis 1, but there's a lot to study about Genesis 1. And today I want to deal with the idea, the concept of creation in 6 days. But before we begin, as we do usually, I want to begin with what we're doing this year, blowing the shofar in Zion. So I'm calling out to Hashem, let the shofar blow in Zion. Official Shalom Jerusalem Shafar, as you can see, calling out to Hashem. Yeah, it's a call out to Hashem. By the way, according to the Jewish tradition here in Israel, we began today in our prayer requesting rain. We're deep in the fall. Yesterday we moved the clock. Daylight savings time was over. And we are now here in Jerusalem. And the time here in Jerusalem is right now 6:22 p.m. So we're going to go on to the studying of the book of Genesis. In last lesson, we spoke about the first division of the creation. We spoke about dividing the creation by the act of speech of God. Vayomer Elohim. And God said, we found 10 times, it's repeated in the first chapter of Genesis, that phrase, Vayomer Elohim. And God said. And God said appears 10 times. We found something very interesting. We saw that there was a parallel between the first time and the fourth time, the second time and the fifth time, the third time and the sixth time. And we saw there was a parallel between all. It was symmetric. The creation was symmetric and everything had a pair. We saw that we compared the saying of Hashem that there should be light, compared it to the saying of Hashem that the lightings in the heaven should light. And we did a lot of symmetry. And we found out that there is one saying of Hashem, one act of speech of Hashem that doesn't have a parallel. And that was the creation of man. And we said that the parallel of the creation of man is God himself. But today I want to talk about a different division. A different division. Shalom to Captain Ron from Ontario, Canada. Today I want to speak about a different division. Not the division of the acts of speech, but the division of 6 days. The division of 6 days. And I want to try to understand what is the concept. Shalom to Shelly, to Shellhawk from Michigan. What is the concept of creation in 6 days? So the division of creation into days, into 6 days, already in the very early times of the different explanations, commentaries on the Torah, the exegetical traditions, pointed out the significance of the number 6. I want to read from hello to Zachary Walker from Arkansas. I want to read Philo, who was an Alexandrian commentator of the Bible already in the ancient world, and this is what he writes. The world was made in 6 days, not because the Creator stood in lead for a length of time. For it's natural that God should do everything at once, not merely by uttering a command, but by even thinking of it. But because things created required arrangement. A number is akin to arrangement. And of all numbers, 6, by the laws of nature, is the most productive. It was fitting, therefore, that the world, being the most perfect of created things, should be made according to the perfect number of 6. So from a mathematical perspective, what he calls the laws of nature, Philo is convinced that the number 6 has a unique, perfect quality. It is lacking in other numbers. 6 is indeed the smallest perfect number. It's equal to the sum of its divisors, meaning 1 plus 2 plus 3 is 6, and 1 times 2 times 3 is 6. The number 6 is also harmonious in the geometric perspective. There are 6 sides to a cube, also 6 sides to the Star of David. 6 is also the largest all Harshad numbers. The number 6, or its multiple 60, has profound presence in modern life as well, in all things circular. Anything that is made of a cycle. For example, a circle, 360 degrees. An hour, 60 minutes. A minute, 60 seconds. So these figures are based on the Babylonian mathematical system, which revolved around the number 6 or 60. And the biblical year, which consists of 12 months, is actually twice 6. So what we see here, that the creation in 6 days, what does that represent? It shows, shalom to Christine Reis, the creation in 6 days is a declaration that the world is a perfect paragon of natural law. It's harmonious. It's a whole. This is what we, shalom Christine. So what we see so far, without getting into the division of what the 6 days represent, 6 days shows that the world is harmonious. It's organized. It's perfect. It's the perfect number. This is the 6 days of creation. But there's only one problem. You know what the problem is? According to the Torah, the world was not created in 6 days. There's a surprising narrative. The narrative persists of one more day. If we go on to Genesis 2, Genesis 2, verse 1. Vayichulu hashamayim v'haaretz v'chol tzva'am. And the heaven and all its armies were concluded. And it says in verse 2, Vayichal Elohim bayom hashvi'i melachto asher asah. On the 7th day, God finished the work he had been doing. He ceased on the 7th day from all the work he had done. So was the world created in 6 days or in 7 days? Many people have claimed that the 7th day is after the creation. God created the world in 6 days. But the Torah specifically, explicitly points out that the world was created in the 7th day. Let's listen to this. The heaven and the earth were finished and all their array. On the 7th day, God finished the work he had done. And he ceased on the 7th day from all the work he had done. And God blessed the 7th day and declared it holy, because God had ceased from all the work of creation that he had done. So according to the Torah, the world was not created in 6 days. It was created in 7 days. So the division of the creation narrative into days culminates, of course, with the establishment of Shabbat. And as a matter of fact, this is a classical technique to present and explain a matter which is unnecessary to its immediate context, but serves to illuminate something that will be explained further on. This entire section concerning 6 days of creation was written in the Torah to explain what God says in the book of Exodus. Remember the seventh day and keep it. So this is something unbelievable, what we're saying here now. The whole concept of creating the world in 6 days was for the special significance of the world created in 6 days, because God wanted to create the seventh day. This is something unbelievable, what we're trying to say right now. Let's listen to these sentences. The beginning, it says, we have 2 sentences. I'm reading now in Genesis chapter 2, verse 2 and verse 1. These 2 verses begin with the same word, Vayechal and Vayechulu. But in the first sentence, the subject is the heaven and the earth. Vayechulu hashamayim v'ha'aretz. Both these sentences, verse 1 and verse 2, conclude Shalom Jeanette. Verse 1 and verse 2 begin with the same word, with the same verb, finished. But the first one, the synthetic subject of the first sentence is heaven and earth. So their creation is complete. But the subject of the second sentence is God. He is the one who completed his work on the seventh day. And the next verses refer to him. The second stage, which also focuses on God, consists of 2 sentences and 2 stanzas. The first station of work, Vayechal Elohim et kol melachto, Shalom Shel, kol melachto, his work. This focus is evident enough in the content of those lines. But if we continue on, we see it's further highlighted. What happens? The work he has done. God finished his work on the seventh day, and on this day he sees Shabbat. At this point, the definition of Shabbat is negative. It is Shabbat because nothing happened. Nothing was created on this day. But then, when we go into the second stanza, verse 3, and God blessed. This is an indication that this is a new stanza. Shalom to Heather from Washington. We're right now talking in Genesis chapter 2, verse 3, and God blessed, an indication to the new stanza, which includes the day, which is unique meaning. With this blessing, Shabbat becomes unique unto itself, not just because nothing is created on this day, but because it is the day of blessing. Not only blessing, sanctity. Here, blessing and holiness fills the void of cessation. This second stanza mentions only the cessation of work as the reason why the day is so special. Because on this day, God ceased from all the work of creation. Rather than as the day's essential definition. The seventh day marks the end of God's work, and at this end, the Sabbath is holy and blessed. Listen carefully. What we're saying here is that God not created 6 days and stopped on the seventh day because he wanted to rest, but God created the world in 6 days because he wanted the seventh day. Now let's go back to what we spoke before. I gave a whole big speech saying that 6 days represents harmony. So where does 7th day come? And this is the beauty. If the world was created only in 6 days, it would exactly show that the world is harmonious within itself. The creation of the 7th day comes to tell us that this whole cycle, which is harmonious inside itself, is a godly plan. God planned the world this way, that it should be perfect in 6 days, it should be harmonious in 6 days, so that on the 7th day he can come and bless, and we can remember, and this is what it says in Exodus, remember that God rested on the 7th day. And that's what we should do. By the way, when you read the story of creation, this is not the only thing that shows that God compares himself to man. As we saw before, that man was created in God's image. God created, if you pay attention, everything was created during the day. In the evening, nothing was created. God created, and then there was evening, there was day, began the second day. There was evening, there was day. But God, the creation, the action of creation, whether it was a speech or the action of creation, this was all done during the day. Shalom Maranta. Shalom to all of you who are joining us from wherever you are all over the world. It's unbelievable. God wanted us to be like Him. So He created the world in 6 days and He rested on the seventh day and He blessed and sanctified the seventh day so that we should do the same thing. And at the same time, He blessed and sanctified the seventh day, but also He created everything during the day, not during the night, so we should be like Him also. So this is the concept of creating a harmonious world, but adding a seventh day to show that God is sanctifying it and blessing it. Let's go back to the 6 days of creation, which are actually 6 days of creation, with the seventh day showing that this whole 6th day of creation is blessed by God. On the 6th day of creation, we have something very, very interesting. We see that there's a division between what is created on each one of the days. And this is very interesting. Because we spoke last time about 10 actions of speech of God creating. And now we see that all these all divided into 6 days. It means that on some days more than one thing was created. And if we look at the structure, we'll see something unbelievable. On the first day, one thing was created. On the second day, one thing was created. On the third day, two things. The dry land and the greenery. Again, on the fourth day, the heavenly lights, one thing was created. On the fifth day, one thing was created. One creation, water, creatures, and birds together. On the sixth day, again, two things. So it's 1, 1, 2. 1, 1, 2. This is unbelievable. Now, this is something so unbelievable. Listen carefully to this, what we're saying right now. It's going to be shocking. On the third day, we said what was created, the dry land and the greenery. Now, the creation of the dry land and the greenery on the same day is easily justified. Just like the waters that covered the seabed are included within the definition of the word sea, the greenery that covers the land is included within the definition of the land. This is especially clear from naming the dry land and the water on the third day. God called the dry land earth, and the gatherings of the world He called seas. And the gathering of the world is part of the world that is covered in water, and it is referred to as the sea. In parallel, the text goes on to describe how the land is then covered in greenery. So the sea land is covered with water, and the dry land, the Yabashah, is covered with vegetation. So this is very interesting. The third day, the land and the greenery. Then we said again, so we have one thing on the first day, one thing on the second day, and two creations on the third day. Again, we have the fourth day, one thing, the fifth day, one creation. But the sixth day, we have two creations. The animals and the humans. They were created on the sixth day. Now, from a scientific, zoological perspective, the juxtaposition has interesting moral and theological implications. First of all, both human and land animals are categorized as land dwellers, in contrast to creatures of water and sky. In certain sense, the parallel structure of days is based on living space. As a foil to the opening state of chaos and void, the first and fourth day describe the organization of the heaven. The second and the fifth day, the Creator deals with the waters. And on the third and sixth day, the land is set in order. So from this perspective, it makes sense that all land dwellers, humans and animals, are created on the same day. But something is very strange here. The division hardly mitigates the surprising observation that the difference between water animals created on the fifth day and land animals created on the sixth day is Shalom from New Zealand. The difference between water animals and land animals is far more acute than the difference between land animals and humans. Water creatures and land animals are created a whole day apart, while land animals and humans are grouped together as land dwellers. This division can hardly be dismissed as a technical distinction related to habitat. The closely juxtaposed creation of animals and humans bears significance of the status of both animals and humans. The notion of human superiority is challenged by this ideological affinity with animals, which is supported only from a biological perspective. What I said before, that the world was created in 6 days to show that on a perspective of science, this is something that is whole, something that is complete. This is the Torah coming to teach us. That yes, from this biological perspective, man is like animal. I would say even on a cellular level, on cells, a human cell is identical from a biological perspective to those of the other land mammals. To the extent that in some cases, vital organs of certain animals can be effectively transplanted into humans. What is more, humans and animals have far more in common for what is life, but a struggle of survival, food, and propagation of the species from the moment of birth to the moment of death. The description applies equally to all living creatures. And from this perspective, a person is nothing but a sophisticated animal. This is also amplified by the fact that God designates vegetation for both human and animal consumption. And indeed, human and animal digestive systems are strikingly similar. As noted in the book of Ecclesiastes. What does it say in chapter 3, Ecclesiastes? For the fate of man is the fate of cattle, the same fate awaits both of them. The death, the preeminence of man over beast is nothing, for it is all but shallow breath. Who can say that the spirit of man rises while the spirit of beast sinks into the ground? So from this perspective, it's only fitting that the human and land mammals were created on the same day. Both draw the same breath, their hearts pump blood around their body, inside their systems are almost identical. Now this similarity also as bearing for the status of animals. The fact that animals are not given for human consumption when the world is created. According to the developing doctrine of Genesis 1, animals, especially land animals, are living creatures, and the idea that these living creatures can be considered human food is not even suggested. This happens later in the recreation. But what we see so far, that from the perspective of creation on a harmonic perspective, mammals and man are the same. But there's one other division. And here we see there's a total division. I want to take you to a less common, less popular, less well-known division of creation. We spoke about the division of acts of speech of God. We spoke about the division of days. But there's one other division. And this other division is a very important division. It's using of a very special verb. This very special verb is in Hebrew, bara, created, to create something from nothing. Now this is mentioned in Genesis 1 3 times. This verb, bara, created, is mentioned 3 times in chapter 1 of Genesis. Chapter 1 of Genesis, verse 1. In the beginning, God created the heaven and earth. Bereshit bara Elohim et hashamayim v'arz. It's one more time created, mentioned in verse 21. And God created the gigantic creation of life. And in the third time, in verse 27, and God created man. Now listen carefully. According to the division of days, man is just a sophisticated mammal. But according to the division of the word creation, there are 3 levels of creation. When God first created the actual world, the solid world, wherein there plants and stones are part of the same world. The second creation that God created was the very fact of life. Animals, birds, fish, the fact of life. It's a new dimension of creation. Then comes a third dimension of creation, the creation of mankind. It's a third dimension, and in this perspective, man is something totally different than animals. So we had a division of the creation of the world in 10 acts of speech of God. We had a division of the creation of the world in 6 days, which at the end comes the seventh day to say that God is the one who made this whole world harmonious. And from this aspect, the world is part of one harmonious, complete creation, where man is, just like the animals, we're all part of science. Then there's the third perspective, the perspective from the word bara, created. And this appears only 3 times, in verse 1, in verse 21, and in verse 26. 3 dimensions of creation. The exact world, creation of life, and creation of mankind. Shalom, hope. How are you? Shalom, blessings from Jerusalem. So we see that in this chapter, which we could be spending years and years just studying this chapter, it's unbelievable how many insights we can see just from listening to the words of the story. The fact that the 6th day of creation and a 7th day. The fact that we have here 10 acts of speech of God. And the fact that we have 3 times the verb creation. We can go on and talk about Genesis chapter 1, but I think for now, this is enough about Genesis chapter 1. I'll just point out one little thing which I heard this week and I thought it was very beautiful. The first creation of God was light. And afterwards, all the other creations, God told them that they should multiply. For instance, when God created the plants, He said, and He created a tree that makes fruit. When God created the animals, he says to them, multiply, be fruitful and multiply. So too when God created man. The first creation, light, the only thing that it said that God saw it itself and saw it was good, the creation of light is something that doesn't need to do another action in order to multiply. Very existence of light brings more light. The very existence of light brings more light. This explanation is a wonderful explanation I heard from my son-in-law. I was just a week ago, we had born was my 10th grandchild, and my son, and his name was Yair. Yair, from the word or, which means light. Yair, he shall illuminate. He shall illuminate the world. The world should illuminate itself to him, Yair. But he said the word or is the only thing that in its very existence brings more and more. So I want to wish us all that we all be blessed by the light of Hashem, that we in our very existence bring more light to the world, illuminate the world, and the world illuminates itself to us. And we're going to conclude as we began with the blowing of the shofar. And I'm inviting you all, go into shalomjerusalem.org/shofar. If you haven't got your own shofar, get your own shofar and blow the shofar. Let the shofar blow on Zion. Shalom to you all from Jerusalem. I love you all. Thank you for coming. I hope you enjoy it. Shalom, shalom.